Chapter 3. Beyond the Veil. The sea had always been a liar. It hid kingdoms beneath its storms, swallowed the bones of empires without remorse, and carried stories farther than any messenger ever could. Sailors spoke of its moods as though it possessed a will of its own, but the oldest navigators knew better. The sea remembered. Before dawn, the sanctuary stirred with a quiet purpose unlike anything the storyteller had witnessed before. Bells did not ring. No proclamations echoed through the mountain halls. Instead, watchers moved with practiced precision, their footsteps measured and calm, each person already knowing the task entrusted to them. The expedition had begun. Mist clung to the lower terraces as the storyteller followed Lyra through passages he had never seen before. The familiar crystal halls slowly gave way to rough-hewn tunnels where the mountain itself seemed untouched by the hands of builders. Veins of pale, blue heartstone threaded through the stone like rivers of frozen starlight, illuminating the descent with a soft, unwavering glow. "Does everyone know where we're going?" the storyteller asked, his voice carrying strangely in the narrow passage. Lyra smiled faintly. "They know where we're sailing. And the difference?" She glanced over her shoulder. "We know our destination." Her expression grew thoughtful. "We do not know what awaits us when we arrive." The answer lingered in his mind as they continued downward. After nearly an hour, the tunnel widened into a cavern so vast that its ceiling disappeared into darkness. The storyteller stopped in silent amazement. An underground harbor stretched before them. Black water reflected thousands of crystal lanterns suspended from the cavern roof, making it seem as though stars floated both above and below. Stone piers reached into the still water, where vessels unlike any he had ever seen rested at anchor. They were neither the broad merchant ships of the southern kingdoms nor the sleek war galleys described in ancient chronicles. These ships possessed graceful, sweeping hulls reinforced with polished bronze and inlaid crystal. Their masts curved like the trunks of ancient trees, while sails of shimmering white cloth hung neatly furled against the morning stillness. Runes glowed faintly along each vessel's keel, pulsing in rhythm with the heartstones embedded deep within their frames. "They're beautiful," he whispered. "They were built before beauty became a luxury," Lyra replied. "They were built to survive." The nearest vessel dwarfed the others. Its prow had been carved into the likeness of a soaring phoenix, wings extended as though forever preparing to take flight. Crystal eyes gleamed softly within its weathered face. Gold lettering, faded by countless centuries yet still legible, arched across its bow. The Aurora's Promise. The storyteller reached out, resting his hand against the smooth timber of the hull. The wood was warm, not from sunlight, from the heartstone sleeping within the ship itself. It felt almost alive. A deep voice interrupted his thoughts. "She remembers every sea she's ever crossed." The storyteller turned to find Kaelin approaching with two watchers carrying crates of provisions across their shoulders. Unlike the ceremonial armor he had worn within the sanctuary, Kaelin now wore practical, traveling leathers reinforced with fitted plates of dark steel. A long cloak hung from his shoulders, and the great sword across his back had been wrapped in protective cloth against the salt air. He rested one gloved hand against the ship's hull. "My grandfather sailed aboard her." A small smile crossed his weathered face. "So did his." He paused. "And his." The storyteller blinked. "How old is this ship?" Kaelin looked toward the distant darkness of the cavern. "No one remembers." For a brief moment, neither man spoke. Then the ship answered. A low, resonant hum vibrated through its timbers as the heartstone at its core slowly awakened, responding to the presence of its keepers. The sound rolled gently across the harbor. One by one, the other vessels answered. Soon the cavern echoed with a chorus of ancient voices, each ship greeting the dawn after centuries of patient silence. The expedition was no longer merely planned. It had begun. Far above, unseen beneath the morning sky, the divided heavens stretched from horizon to horizon. Beyond those horizons, hidden behind the impossible storms of the Veil of Horizons, Another people watched the same sunrise. And between them lay an ocean that had spent 10,000 years keeping their worlds apart. Not for much longer. The feather rested in the storyteller's palm long after the keeper had walked away. It seemed impossibly ordinary. No jewel adorned its quill. No ancient runes shimmered across its surface. Yet when he tilted it toward the crystal light, countless strands of silver danced through its white barbs like moonlight caught in fresh snow. It carried no power he could feel, only history. He carefully wrapped it once more in the faded blue cloth before placing it safely inside the leather satchel slung across his shoulder. For the first time since leaving his old life behind, he carried something that belonged to an age before legends. The underground harbor had become a symphony of quiet preparation. Massive capstans turned as enchanted anchor chains were inspected link by link. Sailmakers climbed graceful masts to unfurl lengths of shimmering white canvas, each sail woven with threads of heartstone crystal that glistened faintly in the dim light. Watchers moved with calm purpose. Every knot was checked twice, every blade sharpened, every lantern filled. Nothing was left to chance. Lyra stood at the end of the dock, overlooking the still black water. The breeze carried loose strands of her silver hair across her face as she studied the Aurora's promise. The storyteller joined her. "You've sailed before." She smiled. "Many times." Beyond the veil, her smile faded. "No." He looked surprised. "I thought you had." "So did I." She laughed softly at herself. "The keeper once reminded me that experience and certainty are not the same thing." She rested one hand upon the weathered railing. "I've spent centuries protecting stories about the veil." She looked toward the cavern's distant opening where daylight shimmered like liquid gold. "But today, I become part of one." A loud thud echoed across the harbor. Kalen had dropped an enormous travel chest onto the dock with enough force to make nearby watchers glance in his direction. The storyteller walked over. "When the world is in there." Kalen looked up without breaking his work. "Supplies." The storyteller raised an eyebrow. "That chest weighs more than I do." "It does." "You packed all that yourself?" "No." He fastened another leather strap around the chest. "My armor weighs nearly as much." The storyteller blinked. "You travel with all of that?" Kalen shrugged. "If I don't need it, good. If I do, I'd rather have it." The storyteller chuckled. "I suppose that's difficult to argue with." For the first time, a genuine grin crossed the veteran's scarred face. "You'll learn." Nearby, two younger watchers struggled to lift another crate. Kalen sighed dramatically. "You'll also learn." He walked over, effortlessly hoisted the crate onto one shoulder, and continued toward the ship while the apprentices stared after him in embarrassed silence. The storyteller couldn't help smiling. For all his intimidating presence, there was warmth beneath the veteran's hardened exterior. At the opposite end of the harbor, Master Elian stood before a long table covered in ancient instruments. Bronze compasses, crystal lenses, folded star charts, small stone discs engraved with unfamiliar symbols. Navigator Seraphine joined him carrying her ever-turning astrolabe. "The currents?" Elian asked. "They've begun changing." "So soon?" She nodded. "The veil knows we're coming." The storyteller overheard the exchange. "The veil is alive?" Seraphine considered the question. "No." She slowly rotated one ring of the astrolabe. "But it behaves like something that is." She looked directly at him. "The veil was never designed to keep people out. It was designed to keep something in." Silence settled over the table. The storyteller felt a chill crawl across his shoulders. "What does that mean?" Neither scholar answered immediately. Finally, Elian spoke. "We're hoping history forgot the answer." Hours later, preparations were nearly complete. The cavern entrance had transformed from darkness into a glowing archway as sunlight poured through the massive sea gate leading toward the open ocean. Beyond it, blue sky, endless water, freedom, or danger, perhaps both. The keeper walked slowly down the dock one final time. Every watcher bowed as he passed, not from obligation, from respect. He stopped before the assembled expedition. Lyra, Kalen, Master Elian, Navigator Seraphine. The storyteller. 5 souls. One impossible journey. You leave not as conquerors, the keeper said, nor as heroes. His eyes moved from one face to the next. You leave as witnesses. He placed a weathered hand over his heart. If those beyond the veil have endured these long centuries, listen before you speak. Learn before you judge. And remember, his voice softened. The greatest wars in history were often started by people who believed they already understood one another. Each member of the expedition bowed their head. The keeper stepped back. The sea awaits. A deep horn sounded throughout the cavern. Once, twice, 3 times. Heavy ropes splashed into the harbor as mooring lines were released. The sails of the Aurora's promise unfurled with a graceful rush, catching a wind that should not have existed beneath a mountain. The Heartstone embedded deep within the ship awakened fully. Golden light spread through crystal veins hidden beneath the wooden deck. The vessel shuddered gently, not like a machine coming to life, but like a living creature drawing its first breath after a long sleep. The storyteller felt the deck vibrate beneath his boots. He looked over the railing toward the dark water below. The reflection staring back at him was not his own. For the briefest instant, another face looked up from beneath the surface. A young woman, golden eyes, white hair flowing like water around her. She smiled sadly. Then the image vanished as ripples spread across the harbor. The storyteller stepped back, his pulse quickening. He glanced around. No one else had reacted. Had he imagined it? Or had the ship remembered someone else who had once stood where he now stood? Before he could ask, the Aurora's promise began to move. Slowly at first, then steadily. The ancient vessel glided from its berth, leaving the safety of the sanctuary's hidden harbor behind. Ahead, sunlight poured through the great sea gate. Beyond it waited the endless western ocean. Beyond that, the veil of horizons. And beyond the veil, a forgotten world that had waited 10,000 years for someone to find it once again. The Aurora's promise slipped through the great sea gate without a sound. Behind her, the immense stone doors of the sanctuary remained open, revealing the crystal-lit harbor carved deep within the mountain. Hundreds of watchers stood along the docks and terraces overlooking the water. None waved, none called out. They simply watched. For among the watchers, departures were sacred. Every voyage carried hope. Every voyage accepted the possibility that those leaving might never return. The storyteller remained at the stern as the sanctuary slowly receded into the mountainside. He had expected towering battlements or hidden fortresses. Instead, from the sea, there was almost nothing to see. The entrance vanished seamlessly into the cliffs. Water cascaded over ancient stone, disguising every trace of civilization. Within minutes, the sanctuary had disappeared entirely. Only endless coastline remained. He blinked. If I hadn't seen it, I'd swear it was never there. Lyra stepped beside him. That is precisely the point. The sanctuary has survived because no one can find it. She watched the cliffs fade into the morning mist. The world believes the Watchers became legends. She smiled softly. We've worked very hard to encourage that belief. The open sea welcomed them with surprising calm. The waves rolled gently beneath the Aurora's promise, lifting the ancient vessel with an almost affectionate rhythm. The sails, bright as fresh snow, billowed against a steady western wind. The storyteller leaned against the polished railing, watching seabirds circle overhead. They're following us. They always do, Lyra replied. They know these ships. He laughed. The birds remember. Everything remembers. She looked toward the horizon. People simply forget to listen. Life aboard the Aurora's promise settled into an effortless rhythm. Every member of the crew served a purpose. Some climbed the rigging with astonishing speed. Others monitored the glowing Heartstone housed beneath a crystal dome near the center of the deck. A pair of navigators carefully tracked both wind and current, while Seraphine observed the heavens, even beneath the bright daylight. The storyteller wandered from bow to stern, absorbing every detail. Unlike the merchant vessels he had known, there was remarkably little shouting. No captain barked commands. No sailors argued over ropes or sails. The ship responded almost instinctively. A crewman would place his hand upon a crystal set into the railing. Moments later, the sails adjusted themselves. Another touched a bronze wheel engraved with ancient runes. The rudder turned smoothly without visible effort. Master Elian noticed the storyteller staring. Curious? I've never seen anything like this. The old scholar chuckled. Few have. He rested his hand upon the ship's railing. The Aurora's promise was never meant to be commanded. It was meant to cooperate. The storyteller frowned. With whom? The crew. He tapped the polished wood. Heartstones don't obey. They respond. To trust. The storyteller looked down at the deck beneath his feet. So, the ship knows us? Elian smiled. In a manner of speaking. The storyteller suddenly remembered the face he had seen reflected beneath the water. The strange woman with silver-white hair. Before he could mention it, the scholar's expression shifted. You felt something, didn't you? The storyteller hesitated. I thought I saw someone. Elian's smile neither widened nor disappeared. The oldest Heartstones occasionally remember former companions. So, I wasn't imagining it. No. The scholar's eyes drifted toward the ship's glowing crystal core. But whether she remembered you, or you remembered her, I cannot yet say. Near midday, Kalen summoned the storyteller to the forecastle. The veteran stood beside a rack of training weapons carved from polished ash wood. You'll need this. He tossed a practice sword through the air. The storyteller barely caught it. I've never used one. I know. Then why? Because that will change. The storyteller looked down at the wooden blade. I thought you brought me because I write. Kalen folded his arms. The keeper brought you because you listen. He gave a faint grin. I intend to make sure you survive long enough to write. Several crew members quietly stepped aside, forming an open circle on the deck. The storyteller swallowed. You expect me to spar? I expect you to learn. Kalen drew his own wooden practice blade. No one's asking you to win. He settled into a relaxed stance, only to stand. The storyteller awkwardly copied him. His grip felt clumsy, his footing uncertain. Kalen circled slowly. First lesson. The sword isn't your strength. Before the storyteller could respond, Top! The wooden blade struck his shoulder. Not hard, just enough to make him stumble. You were watching the sword. Kalen stepped back. Watch me. They reset. Again. This time the storyteller focused on Kalen's eyes. The veteran smiled. Top! The blade lightly struck his leg. You watch my face. Another reset. You fight with your whole body. Again. The storyteller watched Kalen's shoulders. Top! His wrist. Again. His side. Again. His back. After nearly 20 attempts, the storyteller collapsed onto the deck, breathing hard while several nearby crew members tried and failed to hide their laughter. Kalen offered him a hand. You improved. I didn't land a single hit. No, but you stayed standing twice as long. The veteran helped him to his feet. In battle, that can mean the difference between dying and learning. For the first time, the storyteller realized that this voyage would change more than his understanding of the world. It would change him. As evening approached, the western sky transformed into a masterpiece of crimson, gold, and violet. The sea reflected the heavens so perfectly that the horizon vanished altogether. Water and sky became one endless expanse. Seraphine remained alone near the bow, her astrolabe turning faster than it had all day. Her brow furrowed. She adjusted one of its outer rings. Then another. The crystal sphere at its center began to glow. Not blue, not gold, silver. She looked sharply toward the empty western horizon. What is it? Lyra asked as she approached. Seraphine did not answer immediately. Instead, she whispered almost to herself. We're not alone. Far ahead, where the sea kissed the fading light of the setting sun, something flashed. Just once. A single point of white light. Then darkness. No ship could be seen. No land. Only that impossible flash. As if someone, somewhere beyond the edge of the known world, had seen them first. The known world had seen them first. No one spoke. Every eye remained fixed upon the western horizon where the white light had appeared. The sea rolled gently beneath the Aurora's promise, as though unaware that something impossible had just occurred. The storyteller narrowed his eyes. I don't see anything. You weren't meant to, Seraphine answered quietly. Her hands tightened around the ancient astrolabe. The crystal at its center continued to glow with a soft silver radiance, its brass rings turning faster than ever before. Then what did we see? Lyra asked. Seraphine did not look away from the horizon. A reply. The words settled over the deck like an approaching storm. Kalen stepped toward the bow, resting one hand on the hilt of the great sword across his back. A beacon. Seraphine slowly shook her head. No, a beacon remains fixed. She looked down at the astrolabe. This moved. Master Elian joined them, carrying one of his crystal cylinders beneath his arm. The observatory detected a moving heartstone. The keeper believed someone was carrying it. Seraphine nodded once. I believe he was right. The storyteller felt the hair rise along the back of his neck. They know we're coming. No, Lida Kerekti softly. I think they've known for quite some time. Night descended swiftly over the western sea. One by one, unfamiliar stars emerged above the horizon. The storyteller immediately noticed something was wrong. The constellations looked different, not entirely. The familiar hunter still stood above the northern sky. The twin crowns still shone in the east. But low above the western ocean, new stars appeared. 7 brilliant lights arranged in a perfect circle. He frowned. I've never seen those before. Seraphine smiled without surprise. You couldn't have. She pointed toward the unfamiliar constellation. The 7 sentinels. The oldest navigators believed they watched over the edge of the world. She gently rotated her astrolabe. Modern sailors never see them. Why not? Because no modern sailor has ever traveled this far west. The realization settled heavily upon everyone aboard. Already, they were sailing beyond the limits of every chart ever drawn. The sea changed after midnight. It happened so gradually that no one noticed at first. The waves became smoother, the wind quieter. Even the gulls that had followed them since leaving the sanctuary vanished without warning. An unsettling stillness spread across the ocean. The sails hung full despite the absence of any breeze. The Aurora's promise continued forward without slowing, almost as if the sea itself had chosen to carry her. The storyteller leaned over the railing. The water below was perfectly clear. Too clear. He could see farther beneath the surface than should have been possible. Shapes drifted through the deep. Not fish, not whales. Ruins. Towering pillars rested upon the ocean floor. Broken archways. Collapsed bridges. Statues so immense they rivaled mountains. Entire streets disappeared into endless darkness. His heart raced. Lyra. She joined him at the railing. You see them. It wasn't a question. You knew they were here. She nodded slowly. The sea of echoes. What happened? She stared into the depths with quiet sadness. No one knows. The oldest records simply say. She hesitated. The sea claimed a kingdom. The storyteller watched as the shadow of an enormous dome emerged beneath the water. Crystals still gleamed upon its shattered roof, despite the passing of 10,000 years. There was a city down there. There were many. Master Elian stepped beside them. The Great War wasn't fought only upon the land. His voice was barely above a whisper. The oceans have their own graves. Near dawn, a bell rang once from the mast. Every head turned upward. A young watcher perched high within the crow's nest pointed toward the western horizon. Fog ahead. The announcement spread quickly across the deck. Except, it wasn't ordinary fog. Even from miles away, everyone could see it. A wall of silver mist stretched from north to south as far as the eye could follow. It reached into the heavens themselves. No gaps, no end. Only an endless curtain separating one world from another. The veil of horizons. No painting, no story, no ancient journal could have prepared them for its immensity. The storyteller felt suddenly very small. It looks, he struggled to find the words. Alive. It almost is, Seraphine murmured. She closed the cover of her astrolabe. From this point forward, nothing behaves as it should. The crew grew silent. Experienced sailors instinctively checked ropes and sails. Master Elian secured every crystal case. Kalen loosened the strap, holding his sword. Lyra closed her eyes for a long moment, whispering words in a language the storyteller did not recognize. The ship sailed steadily onward, toward the impossible wall, toward 10,000 years of forgotten history, toward a horizon no living soul from the eastern kingdoms had crossed. As the Aurora's promise drew closer, something impossible happened. The silver mist rippled, not from the wind, from within. Slowly, gracefully, a massive shape moved behind a veil. Too large to be a whale, too elegant to be a ship. It glided through the fog without a sound, its outline barely visible for a heartbeat before fading once more into the silver depths. No one aboard breathed. The storyteller looked at Lyra. What was that? She never took her eyes off the mist. I don't know. For the first time since the journey had begun, one of the watchers admitted there were things in the world that even they had never seen. And waiting just beyond the veil, whatever had been watching them,